by Par Lumber. You knew it had to happen sometime, but Oregon State wishing it wasn't quite this early. The Beavers fall to the Cougars 38-35 on the Palouse on Saturday, handing them their first loss of the season. A hard-fought one needed an onside kick to keep the dreams alive in the final seconds, but could not get it done. We're here to break it all down. Welcome into Talkin Beavers. I'm AJ McCord, alongside Mike Parker, voice of the Beavers, and Jason Jean-Baptiste, played defensive end for Oregon State from 2001 to 2003. So you guys, I know this is not how we wanted this game to go. It's certainly not how Oregon State wanted it to go. Mike, I'll start with you. What was the key to the Beavers not being able to get the win up in Pullman?
AJ, after the beautiful show of solidarity, which was strangely moving to me before the game, to hear Hail to OSU from the Washington State Marching Band, to see Butch the Coug and Benny Beaver riding out together, each holding the other school's flag. I'm up in the booth a few minutes before kickoff. I really was touched by that. I just thought that was the perfect way for these two schools, the brotherhood, the solidarity, being together as the remaining members of the Pac-2 and fighting a good fight on the side of the Angels in that fight. That was all to the good. And then I was sort of expecting now to be wonderfully moved by how the game played out. And 2 plays in, a lot of that good feeling and almost misty-eyed stuff. Well, here we go. Cameron Ward runs for 12 and then throws for 63. And Jason, I don't know about you, but it was almost like it was a uh-oh moment. It was the first time all year the Beavers had been behind. And Jason, it was just a sign of what was to come through most of that first half.
Yeah, Mike, I couldn't agree more. I think, the difficulty in which, the defense had and stopping them, even with that initial drive, kind of dictated what was to come. And, kudos to Cam Ward. I think he had, the best game I've seen him play.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it came against our Beavers. But, the ability of that offense to just pretty much march up and down the field willingly without, little resistance from our defense, I think, is one of the things that dictated that game.
Yeah, Jason, I want to get more into your thoughts on the defense and what it's going to take for them to bounce back in just a minute. We also have a one-on-one interview with Deshaun Fenwick coming up later in the show. 3 touchdowns for the running back against the Cougars. So stick around for all of that. But right now, it is time for our opening drive. Brought to you by Capital Toyota, your way on the Parkway. Jonathan Smith referencing that exact same play that you did, Mike, that uh-oh moment.
I just think that, the margin for error and against a really good team that's playing really well, we just had too many self-inflicted to make up a difference on that. Give you a couple examples. First long ball touchdown, we don't got a guy within 8-10 yards of him. Well, we're not playing the coverage correctly, and that's on us. First drive offensively, we go down, get a couple of good decent runs, turns it into 3rd and 2. We can't execute a toss play between the quarterback and running back. 3rd and 2 turns into 4th and 8. That's self-inflicted, and that caught up to us.
And Mike, the first example that he gave after talking about self-inflicted wounds just being too much to overcome was that opening drive, that opening touchdown by Washington State. And he said the problem for them there, right, the self-inflicted part, was that there wasn't anybody within 10 yards of the Washington State player who ended up scoring the touchdown. And that is a busted coverage moment.
Yeah, it was. And then on offense, he refers to a toss sweep to Damian Martinez on a 3rd and 2. Well blocked. That was going to be a first down right after that big play to put the Cougs up 7-0. It looked like the Beavs were just going to respond, running the ball, and would go down and get the ball game tied at 7. But 3rd and 2 became 3rd and 7 after the mishandled toss sweep from DJU to Damian. And that, too, was a moment of almost, things aren't quite on schedule for the Beavs. I kind of pull away through it all, saying that was not the Beavers' A game by any means, and yet in a tough environment, they still had a chance to win at the end, and I'm kind of leaning on that going into Friday night.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway, and I think that's the way that all Beaver Nation really feels, is that after all that happened in the first half and early second half, we only lost by 3 points, and I think that's a huge thing to keep in mind. It was a hard-fought battle, offensively and defensively. I know it was hard for the defense to keep them all off the scoreboard, but they did. They only scored 14 points, or 10 points in the second half. So there's a lot to take away from it. How they come back from that, we'll soon find out.
Now, one of the people who has to have a little bit of a comeback himself is somebody that we have been heaping praise on for much of the first part of this season, and that's DJ Ungalele, the Oregon State quarterback, looking just a little rattled for the first time really this entire season. Finished the game 17-34, 198 yards, a touchdown, and a pick to his stat line, to where some people in Beaver Nation are asking the question this week, would it have been smart to maybe give somebody else an opportunity at a series? Jace, I'll start with you. What is your response to that question?
Yeah, thanks, AJ. I think one of the things that we saw during the game is for the first time, or one of the times, is his lack of efficiency and accuracy. Hitting the open receiver down the field. I think there might have been opportunities there that were left on the field, and maybe a little bit of miscommunication on some of those throws. But yeah, I would say that there's a little bit of that, but his ability still to keep fighting and get the game a little bit closer towards the tail end of the game, I think enable him to still have some confidence going into this matchup this week against Utah. But I do think that there is maybe like a uh-oh moment there during that game that maybe gave some people a little bit of pause as to his ability to maybe get them to the next level.
AJ, the thing that was impressive, though, about DJ is with all of the things that did go wrong, again, I kind of come back to he finished well. And he directed some long scoring drives at the end and made some big throws in the clutch. He throws a touchdown pass to Jack Velling on 4th and goal when the previous passes and moments hadn't looked quite so good. So he came up big late to give the Beavers a chance. And I think that kind of, for me anyway, and even what Jonathan Smith said, DJU is the starting quarterback against Utah and didn't commit in any way to, but we'll use Aiden this Friday night or anything else. I think the way DJ finished gives him a chance to build on that against Utah.
Absolutely. And build on it, he's going to have to, because that Utah game coming up on Friday night, a very short week for every single player, for Oregon State, for Utah. Deshaun Fenwick, one of the players who says they've got a little bit of a strategy and already have turned the page, learning from this Washington State game, but not letting it carry into Utah. The running back who scored 3 touchdowns against the Cougars joins Talkin Beavers next. Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. This week's legendary performance presented by Abby's, a legendary pizza tradition. The run game pretty much strong and steady as it always is. Deshaun Fenwick, the one leading the charge this week, over 100 yards for him up in the Palouse, and he joins us to break down a little bit about his run game, his style, and his roommate, how it all ties together. The one, the only, Deshaun Fenwick, running back for Oregon State. Deshaun, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this week. I know that first loss of the season against Washington State, never an easy one to process. How are you guys working to bounce back from it?
We're right back to a process today. Since it's a short week, we got back on it today, on this Monday, but a toughness Tuesday today. We hit it hard today, and we're honestly just looking forward to what's to come.
I want to talk about what you guys have already done this year, because obviously the offseason in the Pac-12 was complete chaos for the conference, and yet somehow this Oregon State crew has just stayed so tight-knit, so focused, and you've had a fantastic start to the season. What did you guys do as a team to just block out all the noise and start with the strong start that you have?
I think when we first came into this, everyone obviously seen the noise. Everyone has social media and things like that, so we kind of knew what we were walking into. But I think as a whole, we wanted to obviously, I think the goal was to win the Pac, and whether it be the last Pac-12 championship or whatever it may be, I think our whole goal is to win the Pac-12 championship, and I think that we can still do so with the win on Friday.
Everything is still ahead of you, is what I'm hearing from you in terms of attitude. For you, this running back group has been so much fun to watch the last few years between you, Damian Martinez. Walk me through what this running back crew is like, because it seems like each and every week, one of you has one of those, oh my goodness, plays. For you, certainly we had at least one against Washington State.
Yeah, our running back room is special. I mean, I think anyone on the team can tell you that. We obviously think we're the heart and soul of our offense, as we should. So, but we're just a really, really close group of people. All of us. Even me and Dame even live together. So only thing I could say, it's a true brotherhood, and we love putting in work and we love seeing each other do well.
How unique is that to not just be at a spot? I mean, you and Damian Martinez are this 1-2 punch, and yet it sounds like there's really no pride, no competitiveness between you two in terms of number of carries or touchdown. What does it mean to have that kind of support from your teammate and your roommate?
It's nice, honestly. I mean, we encourage each other. I mean, it's kind of weird because when we come home, we still are kind of in football mode. So we kind of like look over things together, see what we see, kind of talk about what's to come as far as personnel we might be playing against or what plays we might have installed. So I think it's fun seeing a bunch of guys cheering on each other, even though one might do well one play and then one might do well the next. I think it's equally as cool.
Where did you develop your running style?
Oh man, YouTube, I'd say. I just grew up loving football, and when I first started playing running back, I watched Adrian Peterson, I watched LaDainian Tomlinson. I grew up watching Marshawn Lattimore, Steven Jackson, just so many great running backs that I've seen do things, and I just try to mimic them in so many different ways. But ultimately, I could just be myself. So I think, what I see and what I do, I kind of think that relates, but obviously it doesn't. I don't look like freaking Tavon Austin out there. So I just try to do the best that I can when I'm out there.
If you had to say, I pulled this aspect of LT's game or this aspect of AP's game, what about their games do you feel like you've molded into being your own?
Sheesh. I think the physicality that Adrian Peterson plays with, I try to mimic that the most. I feel like that is what naturally comes out the most. LT, man, he was special. There's not a lot of things that I can mimic LT does, but definitely Leonard Fournette. I'd love to tell him, but I used to watch his college highlights for every high school game, and I just like the way he plays, the way he uses his stiff arm, the way he cuts, and then the way explodes through the hole was amazing. So I'd have to tip my hat off to that guy first and foremost.
I mean, we could probably do the little LT celebration. You know what I'm saying?
We
The
could.
little end zone thing. You thought about it?
I did.
I mean, you're talking to someone who grew up in San Diego and was a Chargers fan, so there's a special place in my heart for LaDainian Tomlinson. He was who got me to fall in love with football, actually. That was the glory years when the Chargers were where they were supposed to be. Anyway, so back to you specifically. Obviously, your career here at Oregon State has been something that has been so impressive to watch unfold as we start nearing the end here. What do you want people to remember about Deshaun Fenwick, the Oregon State running back who transferred over a few years ago from South Carolina? What do you want them to remember about the type of play that you brought to the Orange and Black?
I just want them to remember me being a really hardworking guy who always left it on the field every chance he got. Didn't take anything for granted and always gave back to the community.
I love it, Deshaun. Well, certainly you represent yourself very well. We're so grateful that you joined us here on Talkin Beavers. Good luck this week. I know you said Research Stadium's going to be popping off. You have any predictions for how many times the chainsaw is going to go off?
I was talking to Keaton today. Got a good vibe from Bump today. I'm thinking we're going to get at least 3 turnovers, hopefully.
Ooh. Okay.
I'll pray on it.
You pray on it. We'll touch base next week. Good luck this week, Deshaun, and the rest of the season. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, what Oregon State has to do to get the win against Utah on Friday. We'll break down the defense coming up next. Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. Welcome back to Talkin Beavers. Love getting a chance to catch up with Deshaun Fenwick earlier this week. I think I'm going to have him doing the LT touchdown celebration before you know it. But it was so cool Jason, to talk about his relationship with Damian Martinez. These are two guys who could be very well competing for snaps together, but instead, how much more powerful does it make them that they are rooting for the other person?
Oh, AJ, I think it's huge. I think when you have that type of relationship where you're rooming together, you're playing the same position, it really is a iron sharpens iron type of thing. I remember my senior year, my roommate was Bill Swancutt, the legendary defensive end for Oregon State, and we always would talk about little tidbits about the game and things that or cues that would help us throughout the course of the game, and it really does help develop that relationship. So I love the fact, Mike, that Damian has that relationship with Deshaun, and Deshaun, in the same right, is really backing Damian.
And above all, Jace, they want to win, and so they're in it together to win for the Beavers. And I noticed after Deshaun's touchdowns, all three of them, the first person to greet him coming over to the sideline was Damian Martinez. It's not as though he's sitting there in any way sulking. That could have been me. I should have had that touchdown. They're in it together. They love one another. It's a great Oregon State story, and that's a pretty potent 1-2 punch that they're going to need all of. I'm glad you mentioned Swanee, because the great Bill Swancutt, until Isaac Hodgins caught a pass, a defensive lineman caught a pass from DJU, and he became the first defensive lineman at Oregon State since your former roommate, Bill Swancutt, in the 2004 game against Oregon to catch a pass in a game. So thanks for referencing the great Bill Swancutt.
I love your encyclopedic brain, Mike. That is such good info. So cool. Now, Jace, I do got to shift our attention to the defensive squad right here, right now, because this defensive squad I know is going to be unhappy with the way they played this game. Cam Ward entered the game third in the nation in passing yards, fourth in total offense, and then he goes out 3 of his 4 touchdown passes in the air in the first half. So what does this defense have to do to recover from that game against Cam Ward?
Yeah, and AJ, I can't overexpress, how well he played. Cam Ward did. I mean, he looked like a true Heisman hopeful. One of the things that they did a really good job of was spreading our defense out. He had a quick 3-step dropbacks and getting rid of the ball. He was able to find his receivers and his targets really easily. So I think what we'll have to do is put a little bit more pressure on the receivers in the secondary. Maybe play a little bit more bump and run coverage, maybe bring some pressure off the edge a little bit more, a little more blitzing, in order to make that quarterback a little bit more uncomfortable, especially when you look at Utah, who already has a struggling quarterback right now. I think all those elements, Mike, are things in which they could get better at, and I think they'll try to get better at this upcoming Friday.
Ward was phenomenal. You have to tip your hat at some point and just say he made plays, but he had receivers, Josh Kelly in particular, making spectacular one-handed catches, even when the Beavers were in perfect position. Josh Kelly would make a one-handed catch, and Cam Ward would throw a dime. I mean, they were very, very good. Utah will challenge the Beavers in a different way. Such a physical team, and their quarterback situation, though, is a bit unsettled. So as good as Utah is, they're unbeaten. They haven't played a game with Cam Rising yet. Even if Cam plays, as much as he'll challenge any defense that he goes up against, my guess is he'd be a little bit rusty after all the layoffs since being hurt in the Rose Bowl. So I think the Beaver defense will be angry about what happened in Pullman and ready to respond in a big way Friday night.
Yeah, I want to talk about the next Cam in the quarterback that they're going to have to face against Utah on Friday. So let's dive into the Utes when we come back. Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. Now it's time for our look ahead, brought to you by Leatherman, made of metal.
Every game we go in with the same mentality. It's must win. There's no panic here. We can prepare well. Got to play aggressive. Know these games are going to be tight, and go out and compete on Friday.
Jonathan Smith says it's a must-win game. If they do win it, it will be the first time Utah has suffered a loss in this 2023 season. So, Jason, what is it going to take for Oregon State to get the win at home, 6 o'clock kickoff on Friday night?
Yeah, I think, AJ, this is going to be a rock and reeser. It's a Friday night game. I think the Beavs play best when there's a chip on their shoulder. They're going to come into this game with a chip on their shoulder, not only because as a result of the game against Wazoo, but also because of last year's game against Utah, in which we went down, to Salt Lake and didn't have our best of games last year. They're going to remember that this year and try and return that favor in this game. And I think, Mike, one of the elements of playing at Reser is that they have the crowd behind them. It's going to be a Friday night game. It's supposed to be nice weather, and I think it's going to be the perfect makings of what we need in order for us to come out strong and come out with the win at the end of the night. So.
Absolutely. And I think you've touched on Reser rocking, Jason. Friday night, a sellout under the lights, all of the new amenities with the LED lights, the light show. I don't know how many times the stadium's going to go completely dark because that happens when the Beavers score touchdowns. I'm not sure there will be an abundance of those. I'm looking for a slugfest of a game between two teams that pride themselves on physicality and toughness. Kyle Whittingham has done an unbelievable job in building a culture there in his 30 years in the program, 19 as the head coach. And so it's going to be a slugfest, no question, but I think the Beavers will get a huge lift from a sellout crowd. First week of school, the student section will be packed on a Friday night, and I expect the Beavs to bounce back, be able to run the football, do enough in the passing game, and contain an offense in Utah that's still kind of trying to find its way this year. The Beavs will have enough to get back on track.
Absolutely. Utah just putting up 14 points against UCLA last week. So Deshaun Fenwick, for what it's worth, you guys, he said he'd been talking to the defense. He thinks they're getting at least 3 turnovers on Friday night, and that this Reser Stadium is going to be more rocking than we have heard it yet. So we will see what happens, but whatever happens, we will be here next week to break it all down with you. Thank you so much for joining us on Talkin Beavers this week. We'll see y'all next week.